There is one aspect about meditation which is almost taken for granted. That is the idea of here and now. Many say that meditation is about the present and not past. Some talk about being mindful, mindfulness meditation, being alive, okay, and not consumed by thought. Not consumed by thought. So meditation is about being mindful here and now, not thought oriented, not past oriented. And in Vipassana meditation, when breathing is insisted on, when observation of breathing is insisted on, you can see it is part of emphasis on the present. Breathing is a way of keeping the mind on the present. Okay. And this present orientation is taken for granted. But now I want to say this is not always true. I would like to say past has a role, then, there have a role to play. Let me explain why it is so. When we want to focus on the present, we want to focus here, say on a tree, and thoughts keep coming. And thoughts come from past memories. So you want to focus on tree, being alive to the situation, but thoughts are impinging. So thoughts are seen as a distraction to living in the present. But what I would like to say is that instead of focusing here, you dive in. Thought is the way to go into the mind, and thoughts are about the past, about the future. Thought is the way to get inside. Here, some clarifications are needed. Number one, by following thought, I do not mean indulging. No. Indulging means if there is a sad thought, you become only sad without observing it. If it is a pleasant thought, you are excited, happy, without observing it. So, indulging or brooding is not the same thing as observing. This is different. I believe observing a thought, let it be of the past, is a way to reach the deeper sources of mind, even the unconscious. Thought as a guide, enter the mind. Okay. So, brooding, indulging are different from observing. And second thing is, all this is not merely intellectual. Merely intellectual. No. It should have feelings. Feelings. But I am saying it is not merely intellectual. By that I mean it should be intellectual plus feeling. It should be analytical as well as felt. To me, one person who worked systematically on this is not the one who is called a religious person or a spiritual person, but a psychologist, Sigmund Freud. This is what he worked on his patients. This is what is called psychoanalysis. In the psychoanalysis, those who want to meditate may not like the word psychoanalysis, but it means intellectual role plus feelings role. A person goes into the past, feels it. Okay. Freud enables a person to go through his previous experience, childhood experience, feels it. And it is not simply feeling, but understanding the sources, the causes. Essentially, what is the source of this unexplained pain, unexplained neurosis, paralysis? Freud calls all this insight. One needs to get an insight into how the previous conditioning shaped the present. Diving into the mind, exploring. And what happens? One feels healed and so freed. So, how does one become free from conditioning? By examining the conditioning, by observing the conditioning. And how does one do that? By pursuing the thought rationally, intellectually, plus feeling wise. So meditation should be about dealing with the wounds. It is these that keep coming as thoughts. And how can a tree be focused when there is so much going on here? So, thought and past should be pursued like this. And this is self-knowing. And this self-knowing is the foundation for any transformation. So how can we be against past? No. You can't be against. You need this. How can you be against thought? You need this. How can you be against analysis? You need this. But apart from this, you have feelings. You need all of them. So, mindfulness meditation that asks you to focus on the present is not dissimilar to Vipassana meditation that is asking you to focus on breathing. Because the drama is here. Okay. But is it that we shouldn't observe present? It is not like that. When there is a reaction now, okay, you examine it. Say something like jealousy. Maybe you think you don't have jealousy. Jealousy is associated with some bad people. But if somebody is saying nice about himself, and if you don't feel comfortable, then recognize it. That you are not comfortable is a negative thing. So you pursue. And you will see why his positive thing has a negative effect on you, which is nothing but jealousy. And then explore why. It may be not because you have anything to do with him, but it is that it is a reminder of your own failure. Okay. So, you get a reaction. These reactions come through relationships. And using that reaction, you dive in. This is meditation. Okay. And when one understands the connections, then one becomes free. What is meant by understanding the connections? I would say a kind of universalizing the process, universalizing, impersonalizing your feelings. That you feel like this, you understand why, then you see this is how it happens. By that, I mean, that's what I am referring to by universalizing and impersonalizing. This somehow frees you. And Krishnamurti gives definition of meditation as emptying the contents of consciousness. If meditation is defined as the emptying the contents of consciousness, then this contributes to that emptying process. Emptying might mean forgetting, literally, or it is there, but it doesn't have the valence, that is plus and minus of it, it doesn't have. That is also empty. Because what affects the present or what distorts is not the memory in itself, but the valence of it, plus minus of it. Okay. So, past has a role, thought has a role, analysis has a role, thinking has a role, and when there is so much to look into, making thought as a distraction doesn't make sense. Okay, here I can give you one small tip to the students. Some people think that they should meditate, focus on breathing. And then this will develop concentration, and this can be used for reading purpose. Then read. Okay, so you meditate, develop concentration, and use the concentration to read. So this is one thinking, but I would say this is not right. My suggestion is that don't go for breathing. Go inside your mind. Clean it up. And when you clean it up, you become calm. Thoughts don't distract you. In fact, instead of spending 20 minutes on breathing, spend 20 minutes inviting thoughts. You sit. What are the thoughts that are bothering me? Invite. And then examine. Maybe you can write. This is one. What happens when you write is that writing is equivalent to thinking so many times, feeling so many times. You write. And then you read. You read about what others may have said about your experiences. You are hurt by one incident. Then you read the literature on that, because it helps you to look at yourself in a different way. Write, read, discuss with your friends. So essentially, open up. And you know, when you open up, the hold of the thought on you drastically comes down. And you will see, you really don't have so personal secrets. What you think are your secrets are other secrets also. Then the hold of that thought over you comes down. And then after that, you don't think about it. Shall I tell you how I learned these things? I wrote this autobiography, Marriage of a Monk. It meant reading diaries, thinking, analyzing, selecting. Okay, and finding a theme, and lot of analysis and lot of feelings. There are so many events which when I was reading from my diary, I was so emotional. But then by the time I put in a book form, I am no longer emotional. In fact, when I made the book available to students, I was feeling very emotional about it. I mean, if somebody says, I have read the book, I would feel very emotional. I would think, what does he think about me? What is all this? But all those feelings are gone now. It is as if I thought, discussed, I impersonalized, universalized, and put it outside. As if those experiences are no longer mine. The memory is no longer mine. I don't think about them, I don't remember them. So what is this if not emptying the contents of consciousness? This is meditation. And let me tell you, now There are certain things, and one very important thing which I did not discuss in this book, and now I am working on something like a sequel to this. Though it is not for publication, but I am doing this book the same way I did the previous book. And I did a lot of work and it had same effect. Huge feelings first and then feelings come down. Your sorrow transformed into compassion. This is what I noticed. Hurt transformed into compassion. Because the burden of the memory is not on you. So, thinking, feeling, and universalizing, impersonalizing. By impersonalizing, I mean it is not about what happened to you. It is about what happens to mind, what happens to man. It is that understanding that frees you, that unconditions you. But then you can ask, so this is about past. So how about the future? What I noticed is that if you work on the past, what happens is that there is freedom from some specific events. This is there, this we discussed. But it is not the only thing you get. It is when you are working on these specific events, you understand a pattern. You understand the pattern of how hurt is made in the first place. What factors contribute to formation of psychological wound? All this is wisdom. And this wisdom enables you to process the present and the future differently. So Krishnamurti says, how do you not record a wound? You may know how not to record, but only after working on your previous wounds. Through working on the previous wounds, you get to know how wounds are formed in the first place and what is the source of your misery and how there is a way to overcome them. Sorrow is an extremely powerful tool we have. Sorrow is the rope that we hang on to dive into the mind. Extraordinarily beautiful. The purpose of sorrow is to know the mind, to explore the mind. And to explore the mind is important, to change it, to make it better, to free ourselves of it. Sorrow has such a great function to play, great role to play. Okay, so I would say explore the past, and past is the means to reach the present. Don't say, I'm not going to explore past. Past is something different and meditation is about mindfulness. No, meditation is not about being present, not about being mindfulness. It is about self-awareness, self-knowing, which includes probing thought, probing past, deconditioning. All these are important. Meditation is not only about not breathing, it is also not about tree, nor this second. It is something much more. And we will see how this impacts the so-called enlightenment process. We discussed before that nirvana is about consciousness and its relationship with contents of consciousness. Or put in a simpler way, mind and consciousness. We said essential to nirvana is not about improving the mind, becoming a better person, more controlled, calmer, not like that, but disidentification with the mind. Disidentify. Mind has desires, lust, greed, noble thoughts, pleasures, pains. Most people want to change from being greedy to being generous, from being bad to being good. But they may do it, but nirvana is not that. That is about disidentification. So then the question rises, if you are very sure that what is important is disidentification with your mind, how do you do it? Becomes an issue. So, to the question, if nirvana is about disidentification with one's mind and not improving it, tell me, how do you disidentify? That's a very critical question. My first answer to that question is that, no idea. That is my first answer. I know that it has to do with disidentification and not improving it, because improving means more attachment to the mind. That I know. But how to disidentify? No idea. Now, I'll give my second answer. I analyze like this. Say, between mind and body, with whom we are, with what we are attached more, with mind and not with body. In fact, it is not that we are attached to the mind. We really don't think what else we are other than the mind. It's so one-to-one. Whereas we don't have such a thing with the body. We think, okay, this is my body, rather than thinking this is me. In relation to our mind, we think this is me. In relation to body, we think this is my body, rather than this is me. Why so? I think regarding body, we don't feel we are the body because we see body, how our body is similar to other bodies. Blood is red. We don't think it is because our blood it is red. Heart functions in this way, kidney functions in this way. It means we don't associate or equate ourselves with those things because we think they are true of everybody. Whereas when it comes to mind, we think it's only our mind. We think like that. So what I mean to say is that the more impersonal, the more universalized about something is something, then you don't identify yourself with it. That is, impersonalization, universalization leads to disidentification. To move towards disidentification of the mind, disidentification with the mind, you have to see the processes that happen to any mind with some peculiar things added to you and nothing more. So, working on the mind the way I discussed is a step towards disidentification. But whether we disidentify ourselves with the mind or not, trying to improve mind and putting all kinds of goals on the mind is definitely a waste of energy. That is in the wrong direction. So it may mean having more control over the mind, or having a calmer mind, or less thoughts. All mind reforms, they are not step. What is important is disidentification. Disidentification is facilitated by impersonalization and universalization. So it is in that direction we should move. Thank you.